Hello, my name is Dr. Switzer, and today we're going to talk about comparing and contrasting different types of media. First, let's look at the types of media. We have text, short stories, poems, novels. Second, we have audio, podcasts, speeches. Third, we have image, which are pictures, artwork, political cartoons. 4 is video, and 5 is animation, which is creating moving letters, words, or paragraphs, as well as images. Visual text is more memorable. It's transferable faster with knowledge, helps with communication, and enriches understanding. Audio has advantages and disadvantages. Some advantages are you listen when you can't hold a book. You can allow for voice inflection of characters, show emotions, and help you experience the story. And it also can allow for pronunciation of difficult words. Now, some disadvantages with audio. It's difficult to reread a section you do not understand because you're listening. You may not like the voice reading the story. Some like to actually feel and touch a book when they read it. You cannot stop to think about or look up difficult vocabulary when you're listening. And also, active reading strategies like highlighting and underlining and making notes are not possible when you're listening to audio. The next media is a video. We have advantages. It's less brain work. You get to see the characters in action and their engagement. Videos connect better emotionally with viewers, and words are not barriers to comprehension. Some disadvantages with video: no control over content or how it's presented. Characters may look or sound different than you imagine them, and your brain will not be active in the same way as you read the text. Next, we're going to compare visual art and poetry. We're going to study the portrait of Washington crossing the Delaware, and then we're going to read the poem Great Washington. You may want to write down some notes about what you're going to be looking for when we review the painting. So some things that we need to think about when we're looking at Washington crossing the Delaware. What appears to be happening in the painting? What do you see that makes you say that? How would you describe the mood of the painting? And why do you think it's the mood that you chose? Select one figure in the scene. Take a closer look. What do you notice about his facial expression and posture, if possible? What might he be thinking or feeling? Next, what are some things they have in common? What are some differences that stand out? All the different figures that are in this portrait. Okay, so on December 25th of 1776, General George Washington, who stands in the center of the painting looking ahead, led his troops, the Continental Army, across the Delaware River to launch a surprise attack on the Hessians in Trenton, New Jersey. In spite of all the challenging weather, they were successful. What do you think the artist hoped to convey about this event? So these are some of the things that we're going to think about as we look at the painting. So take a moment to jot down some notes. All right, so let's take a moment to look at the painting. Remember, think about what's happening in this painting. What's the mood taking place in this painting? Look at the figures in the boats. Pick one out. Study it. What do you think the artist was trying to convey with this painting? Again, you may want to write down some notes about what you will be looking for when you read the poem. But let's look at our questions that we need to think of as we're reading the poem. Number 1, what's happening in the poem? Number 2, what evidence in the poem supports your answer? And from question number 1. 3, what's the tone of the poem? And 4, what is the mood of the poem? Now let's read the poem. Great Washington by Annette Wynne. Great Washington, oh, to be a worthy son, to you to hear the clarion call of home and country over all, and to answer it like you, standing firm and staunch and true, head erect and facing foe, strong in will and strong in woe. In my country's need, oh, to be indeed a worthy son, to you, great Washington. Now take a moment to go back and think what's happening in the poem. Is there evidence in the poem to support what you think is happening? What's the tone of the poem? And then think about what's the mood. Take a few moments. Now let's compare the painting and the poem. So let's think about it. What's taking place in the painting? How would you describe the mood? And how would you describe the tone? So what's taking place? Soldiers are crossing an icy river. How would you describe the mood? Bleak, desperation. And how would you describe the tone? Determined. Now let's think about what's taking place in the poem, what the mood of the poem is, and the tone. Okay, what's taking place? The narrator wants to be like General Washington. So how can you describe the mood? It's wishful. And how would you describe the tone? Admiring. Now let us look at the similarities and differences of the two pieces of media. First, we'll look at the similarities. Both pieces of media look at Washington's leadership, and both focus on General Washington. Let's look at our differences. When we look at the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, you can visually see what the artist created. You can see the bleakness of their mission. Some differences with Great Washington, the poem, the author allows you to paint the picture in your mind. And also with the poem, the author's words allow you Washington from the author to view Washington from the author's point of view. So by putting it all together, with the painting we see exactly what the author is trying to communicate. With the poem, we have to use inferences and the words and descriptions of the author to see the poem and its meaning. This concludes our lesson on comparing different media.